Being the first to go, that is a little bit stressful. Next up, we have our second pitch from ProAgni. ProAgni ProTech is a revolutionary range of supplements and feedstocks and feeds for livestock that lower methane emissions from sheep and cattle without using antibiotics, decreasing a producer's environmental footprint without increasing costs. ProAgni was mentored by Brad Goldthorpe, and today Warren Lee will be presenting and then joined by Lynn Campbell for Q&A. Please welcome them to the stage.
Thank you very much. I'm Warren Lee, ProAgni's Commercial Director, and it is amazingly fabulous to actually be here three-dimensionally. It's an absolute privilege. These two headlines from the New York Times won't surprise anyone. What might surprise you is the top one was published in 1989. In the last 33 years, nothing has happened to reduce methane output from livestock. The reason for this is, as Joe McFadden at Cornell puts it, everyone wants to reduce methane output, but no one wants to pay for it. And that, in essence, is the problem that ProAgni has solved. By making feed supplements that make animals more efficient, we can generate cost savings in the hands of farmers and a sustainability dividend that we all want. When we started the company, we put this scorecard on our website. It's a model that updates regularly depending on how much product we've sold. It also details the problems that we address. It seems weird to talk about methane in the middle of COP27, but I'm going to do it anyway. Livestock produce about 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. It's mainly methane. And the importance of methane is because it has a short half-life, short-term methane reduction has a massive impact. We also remove antibiotics from feed. The amount of antibiotics in the feeding system, about 70 to 80% is fed to animals, is creating antimicrobial resistance, leading to things like MRSA. It's a petri dish for resistance. And the key thing here is that most of those antibiotics aren't used as antibiotics, they're used as growth promoters. So simply removing them has an economic cost. Now, those two things are existential issues, as we heard this morning. But the cost of food and the profitability of farming is also an existential issue. And we cannot solve the first two at the expense of putting farmers out of business or increasing the cost of food. We save farmers money. And it's not a typo, it's on the slides twice, because it's that important. We've had wide market acceptance, it's based on science and results, and we've won multiple awards. Just before we got on the plane, we won the Australian Technology Competition, which was kind of a bit of a thrill. Here's what we look like through the customer's eyes. This is Rob and Jude Cook, some of our early customers. Feeding the same amount of feed per day per animal, they got their animals to target weight 20% faster. The net impact of that was they spent 20% less on feed. That saved them about $250 per head. But most importantly, or more importantly, it helped future-proof their business. So last month, one of the largest meat packers in Australia decided that they needed 80% of their supply to be antibiotic-free. Rob and Jude were fine. This has bred a massive loyalty among our customer base. So when we put out on our socials that Thomas Foods announcement about 80% antibiotic-free, the first person who came back in was Rob Cook. Terrific news, well done ProAgni. This has led us to about $5 million in sales at retail level in a market that's 1/10 the size of here. That value proposition translates well here. For the average New York dairy farmer with 183 cows, they can save around $30,000 a head. It also helps future-proof them. The New York Climate Act has some of the biggest methane reduction targets in the country, 40% by 2030. There's even a bill before the New South Wales legislature, the New York legislature, to reduce antibiotic use in farming as well. So all of those issues are relevant. If we look at beef operations, which tend to be larger, the feed savings are massive and the future-proofing is equally important. The US methane pledge is targeting 30% reductions by 2030, and increasingly antibiotics in the beef supply chain is becoming an issue. McDonald's has announced a review, and they buy 800 million pounds of beef a year. Our ability to deliver cost savings to farmers while producing a sustainability dividend is genuinely unique. All of the other methane solutions on this slide, well, the ones that are in market anyway, are just another thing a farmer needs to buy. So unless a consumer or a regulator or someone pressures them into it, they have no particular reason for doing it. No one wants to pay, as Joe McFadden says, and with ProAgni they don't have to. How the product works is relatively simple. The key is that humans digest and cattle ferment. So that fermentation process is entirely driven by bacteria. Efficient fermentation by good bacteria means less waste and less feed. And our products support those good bacteria. When we started marketing, it was hand-to-hand combat. We didn't have a reputation, we didn't have results, and it was difficult. What we're seeing now, though, is we're seeing pull-through. The demand from end consumers and a corporate sustainability focus is basically pushing farmers to test our products. This comes from odd directions. We had one customer who ignored us for a year and a half, and then suddenly started talking to us because his bank had offered him a discount on his banking facilities if he had a green story. So needless to say, he came straight back in. We get a margin of around $20 per head per year. On this, with 23 million head on feed in the US, that's a $23 million revenue opportunity. That's at 5%. The entire US market at that $20 a head margin is $460 million. The global market is $6 billion. And even that as a percentage of the global feed additives market of $40 billion isn't a whole lot. Our business model allows for rapid scale and low capital deployment. We partner with local mills and we license them the formulation. The mills manufacture, hold inventory and invoice, and we provide the patented formulation, sales, marketing and technical support. We've also been very successful leveraging non-dilutive grant funding and will continue to do so. Our different approach here required a different team. We brought different thinking. We have strong female leadership. Fiona, one of the founders, is a renowned leader in women in ag in Australia. Between the 10 of us, we have 20 degrees, 3 MBAs, 1 PhD, and extensive real-world experience in a vast number of disciplines. Most importantly, though, we have resilience. That team photo was pre-COVID, and everyone is still there. Which brings us to upstate New York. We already have manufacture and distribution in the US. We have NDAs in place with 2 upstate mills. We have strong scientific and research relationships, and we're well advanced in customer discovery. The building blocks are already in place. We've been made to feel welcome here, and we feel welcome here. So Ash, our US VP, attended the Cornell Dairy Conference, and the Northeast Agribusiness and Feed Alliance published his review of that conference. So we're getting present. To be successful, we need to be part of an ecosystem. We need access to research. And Cornell is going to be one of the first institutions to commission new methane chambers later in the year. We need market access, and our product development path needs access to biotech. We want to be part of a community that's supportive in more ways than just dollars. These are what our financials look like on the $1 Million Award. The key to this is that because it's a royalty-based business, we have high operational leverage. We have no cost of goods sold and very little capital investment. The other aspect of this is that we create a ripple effect in a local economy. So for every dollar of ProAgni revenue, we generate about $6 of revenue for others. Ingredient suppliers, the feed mills, the guys who drive the truck, none of that's our revenue, but it's jobs and economic activity that happens around us. What we're looking at here is creating 11 full-time jobs. That's needless to say to start. And they're all high-quality jobs, 2 general managers, and even the sales positions are graduate level. But perhaps the most important thing that we want to do is use a carbon and research manager to create a verifiable and tradable carbon credit for New York dairy farmers. That credit's probably worth about $10 a head, so that's nearly $2,000 for the average New York dairy farmer. This is Alanco's headquarters in Indiana. Alanco built a $6.5 billion business on creating economic efficiency in agriculture by putting antibiotics in to animal feed. We want to create the sustainable future of that business with the same scale and the same importance, but sustainably. And we want to do that here. Thank you.
Great. Good job. So,
and if I can ask Lachlan Campbell, our CEO, to the stage to help me field questions.
great. So we have 9 minutes, 20 seconds for questions. Judges, over to you, Mary, for the first question.
Great. I'm so excited to see you guys back again here this year and in person. So
We actually exist. Yeah.
you do exist, and that's a great thing. But I know when you presented last year, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the judges and hear the pitch, you were just kind of thinking about coming into the U.S. market, and it was kind of, still dealing with some of the COVID effects. So I'm very curious about, what you have done specifically over the past year in the U.S. What are customers saying about this, and then how is that informing your kind of your marketing plans going forward in the U.S.?
I'd like to talk about the customers first, and if Corwin's here, I'd like to thank him very much for last week and having dinner with his family. I had the pleasure of spending some time with some dairy farmers. So what's different here is this, that the methane story is a very strong story. There's an expectation that farmers have got to reduce their methane emissions. The challenge about that is how to do it without it being a production tax. And I think that is really front and centre for the business. We can do that, and we're doing it. The reality is that for those farmers, bringing some form of innovation to their market, which allows them to do better feed efficiency and puts money on their table, is probably the real reason that we've grown as quickly. We've started already acquiring customers in Colorado. This feels like a natural fit. We've got families with the same value set, and the same value proposition that applies in Australia applies to them.
And so, just to kind of follow up, so how would you see that working in terms of the steps of building out that sales and marketing piece?
So straight away, we'd need 2 general managers, one for dairy, one for beef, both located here. We'd need salespeople as they grow, and we suspect that's going to be about between 4 and 5 per manager, so 5 for dairy, 5 for beef. It would be a flat pyramid. We do need to make sure the team has a customer voice and hears that customer voice clearly.
Great. Over to you, John Eng. Question.
Really glad you came back. I was very impressed with your presentation last year, and like I said, you're real. I'm just good to see you in person. I think you answered my question before with how you're addressing New York State's market and some of the differences. But I had a follow-up really on whether your product has impacted taste at all with either the dairy or the beef.
No, not in the least. And interestingly, we did a trial with West Texas A&M on Wagyu. So taste, texture, all that stuff is critical in that market, and it killed it.
Great. Andy Greven, do you have a question or two?
I have a few, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to answer all of them. So I'm going to start with the first question, which was, you talked about in your presentation about soil stewardship. Could you explain a little bit what you mean and what are you tackling with this product when you spoke about soil stewardship?
So the antibiotic issue and soil health are related. There's a lot of university research coming out of Colorado that basically says the amount of antibiotics that go into the animal and then into the soil is affecting the ability of the soil to sequester carbon. So we're kind of learning over time that these issues that actually appear entirely unrelated are related.
That's interesting. Now I have to look that up because that's fascinating, but makes sense. The second question I have, and I have one after this as well, is, not all cows, like all people, are made the same. And you talk about the gut biome and your product really being able to address a more balanced gut biome response to feed based on your formula. Is it universal, and how have you tested that?
We do get variance in results out of trials, so it's not massively consistent. The main variant, though, is what the base level was. Some farmers measure more and they're more productive, some measure less and they're less productive. We're not seeing any genetic variance or anything like that, but we do get variance against that base level.
That's helpful. And my final question, and I know my colleague John has a question as well. I think one of the things we talk a lot about is the measurement. You're going to measure, this is going to benefit the farmer. How are they going to measure the methane reduction and be able to capitalize on that?
So Vera has a verified methodology for for measuring reductions in enteric fermentation caused by feed additives. It's VM0041, I think. We would use that methodology, and we believe that methodology would get us about a 10% reduction in round one, and there's a further round of research that we can do that will probably get us to 20. But the methodology's there. Very, very recent. Very recent.
Thank you.
Over to you, John.
Yeah, you really laid out well your strategy entering the U.S. What do you think is the top 2 to 3 challenges entering the U.S. market versus, say, Australia?
The first one is channel partners. I mean, we're working, the market in Australia is different to here. We're going to need channel partners to go to market. We're in deep and extensive conversations with both Novus and Feedworks regarding that. The second part about that is the methane story is much stronger in the US. The antibiotic story is much stronger in Australia. What we're seeing, and I think is the challenge for ProAgni, is we've been together for 6 years as a team. Bringing new people into that team, and they've got to be located here, will be a disruptor for that, and I understand that as CEO.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Teagan, do you have a question?
Hi, thank you. I'm just curious relative to the U.S. market again, and the embedded infrastructure around antibiotics and use of those. How do you convince, and there are regulatory pressures in some of the markets that you're in already and not quite here yet.
Yep.
So how do you convince the farmers that this is something they need to switch to?
So one of the taglines that we use at home and quite effectively is, if you didn't have to use antibiotics, why would you? So our sell is about saving the farmer money, and the other stuff is just sort of sugar on top. So if we can genuinely convince that person that they can take the antibiotics out of their feed system and actually make more on their farm than they did before, it's a really, really low barrier. And it's been an interesting experience because I naturally wanted to campaign on the antibiotic issue, but it's not the way to win the argument. The best way to win the argument is make them money.
Yeah, don't drive up their driveways unless you can add an independent value proposition with a financial solution. The social license conversations regarding methane, regarding antibiotic use, that's fine, but you're not going to get speed of adoption unless there's a financial solution for the people that buy our product. We've learned that the hard way. We learned it very quickly, but my neighbours buy our product and they were the first to start.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. John Eng, you've got the closer.
Just as a clarity, you said, was it a total elimination of antibiotic use, or is it a reduction in antibiotic use?
It's reduction. No one, including us, has any beef, see what I did there, with using antibiotics to treat sick animals. The issues are around using them as growth promotants and using them prophylactically, which is, that still boggles me. It's like You know, you go into the doctor with a sore throat and they decide they're going to treat everyone in your town with antibiotics just in case they get a sore throat. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
It's great. Let's call it there, guys. Let's give ProAgni a hand. Great job, judges.
Thank you.
Great job. Really good.
You-
Appreciate it. Yep, all good. That's awesome. All right. So we're going to have one more pitch before we're going to take a